So I'm not trying to sound like an alarmist. It's just that if they're using CBD products, then they are significantly at risk if they're called up for a random drug test or if they have a post-accident drug test. If they test positive, it doesn't really make any difference about where they're alleging that the marijuana metabolite came from. If it's there, it's there.
You ready to talk about CBD?
Yeah, let's talk about CBD.
Okay. Well, first of all, there's folks that aren't familiar with this stuff, and I always like to start with the definition. What is CBD? Can you explain basically in layman's terms what that three-letter term refers to?
Sure. Well, let me give you a sort of a final statement, and then let's work back. And because you're talking with a lot of people in the commercial driving industry, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I want them to receive at least one very significant, word from me about this. If they are driving a commercial vehicle, if they have a commercial driver's license, they should not use any CBD products. Okay, now that's the final word, and we'll tell you how we get there. Okay, at least they'll have that message. Okay, and I'll give you some more clarity about that too. We come along because it could be a career ender for them. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, basically, when you're talking about a cannabis plant. Let's start. Okay, that's what the plant is, and so there's two components to that. One that you hear about a lot, which was the hemp bill, HEMP bill, was passed by Congress back a few years ago. And it was done under the guise that what we were going to do is we're going to make this available for farmers. Okay, because you can use hemp in paper, textiles, oils. So there is some legitimate usage for it. The other part of the cannabis plant, of course, is marijuana. And so when you're talking about hemp, by law is not supposed to have more than 0.3% THC, which is marijuana.
That's the active chemical in marijuana that makes you high.
That's right. THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. It's a big old name, but then the CBC is a drug, or it's a compound called cannabidiol. Cannabidiol. That's the CBD. That's got all the. Well, what's happened is it went way beyond the farming, the farming situation, and now it's everywhere, and it's really all over. Truck stops, travel centers. I mean, local stores. I mean, I'm sure in Kansas City, just like it is in Cookeville, you can buy CBD products for everything from toenail polish to, removing earwax. I mean, it's touted to cure everything. And I'm not saying it's not potentially useful. You asked me a question about, there is a product that's called Epidolex, which is the only medicine that actually is a CBD product, and that's only used in childhood seizures. So it's not something that a typical commercial driver would ever encounter. Now, there is research being done with CBD to see if there are perhaps other medical benefits, but everything now, in terms of what, let me get a point here. Everything that's out there now is basically word of mouth. I mean, it's promoted, and a lot of it, Mark. And again, I don't want to sound judgmental. It's not. It's just I'm giving you not just my observations, but the study of a lot of medical literature. It's a extremely profitable product, and that's why you see so many people that are promoting it and using it for everything. The CBD, pure CBD, does not have very much in the way of psychoactive uh, response to it. In other words, it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier very readily. So some people, and that's a little bit confusing when you think about the fact that there are a lot of people that say, well, it, quote, makes them feel so much better, unquote. That makes sense? Well,
Yeah.
if it doesn't get into your brain, and so what happens is people use the CBD product, but there's it's supposed to be regulated, but unfortunately, it's like a lot of things in our bureaucracy. Nobody ever looks at it. So, and again, Mark and Toney could go out and sort of set up our own little store and say, we're going to sell CBD that we get from our, from our cannabis plants. But who's knowing whether or not we test it or not to see, well, what is the concentration? What part of the plant did we get it from? Did we get it from the flowers, which have a lot higher, THC content than other parts of the plant? So it's not regulated well at all. Every now and again, you'll read a report where somebody gets busted because they were selling CBD that had higher than a 0.3% level of THC in it. So we've tested many products, and it's used oftentimes now when a commercial driver, this is where a commercial driver can really get into trouble, because they like to use that then knowingly or unknowingly as a reason why they tested positive on their marijuana metabolite. And they'll oftentimes say, well, I've been using CBD gummies, or I've been eating some CBD brownies, or, whatever it may be. Well, that may very well be truthful, but that does not allow them then to be dismissed from having a positive marijuana metabolite. And when that happens, then they have to, if they're going to continue to drive commercially, then they have to go see a substance abuse professional and go through a program, and then basically be randomly tested for at least 2 years. And some companies, if you fail a drug test, you're terminated. And so before they could get another job with another company, then that company has to check the national database to see if that driver's ever been found to have a positive drug test, a federal drug test. So you can see the ramifications of that. But even more critical than that, if a driver is in an accident and say someone is injured or killed, well, then they would deem to be driving while impaired with a positive marijuana metabolite in their system, which would be obviously a much more critical piece in terms of what the ramifications might be. So I'm not trying to sound like an alarmist. It's just that if they're using CBD products, then they are significantly at risk if they're called up for a random drug test, or if they have a post-accident drug test. If they test positive, it doesn't really make any difference about where they're alleging that the marijuana metabolite came from. If it's there, it's there.
You mentioned earlier that this is very often not a regulated product. I've always been told, with herbal remedies and other things, that one of the problems is if it's not regulated, you really don't know what's in it. There's no one checking that. Is that the big problem there?
Exactly. It's the same thing in your vitamin and mineral industry. One of my colleagues and I were talking about that earlier. There are very few vitamins that have what's called USP certification, that's US Pharmacopoeia. Now, that's not the FDA. US Pharmacopoeia actually there are some brands of vitamins that allow their vitamins to be tested by the US Pharmacopoeia. And that attests then to the fact that, yes, if you are taking fish oil, that actually is fish oil, or if you're taking garlic, that actually is garlic. You always have to be concerned if you're buying something like that. And again, I'm not trying to be promotional or judgmental, but if you're taking any product, you've seen, sometimes you'll read on the bottle, it'll say distributed by some XYZ company in Boise, Idaho, or Schenectady, New York. Well, that doesn't tell you though where it was made or manufactured. So there's a lot of difference between where it's manufactured and where it's put into a bottle and sold out to the public. So it's the same situation that you get into with any kind of the hemp products. There's really not a good regulation. Well, and it would be impossible, frankly, at this stage to do much in terms of regulation because it's so pervasive across our culture. And so, it's very, very, very challenging. So, I mean, I've actually seen people that, that I knew anecdotally weren't smoking marijuana, but they've had profound side effects by using CBD products in terms of their central nervous system, unbeknownst to them that the CBD products they were used had a significant level of marijuana metabolites in them.
Another thing that I've heard about with this is drug interactions that, when I go to my pharmacy, one of the things my pharmacist and my doctor always check on is this prescription medication I'm on conflicting with this one or interacting with it in a way that could harm me? Um, with us not really knowing what's in CBD, how much of a problem is that with CBD? How could it
Well,
potentially affect someone?
Well, it can affect other drugs significantly because it alters the metabolism of a lot of medications. So some medications may be metabolized more rapidly, some may be metabolized more, slower. Also, the CBD and the THC also interact with each other. So if you're taking allegedly using CBD, but you've got THC in it, then the THC actually is more potent.
Wow.
So again, you can understand why some people can have some pretty bizarre reactions to what they might have been thinking was a fairly benign product. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm not totally against the CBD. What I'm totally against is when it's used or promoted inappropriately, and we're not. There probably are some medicinal properties of that drug that will eventually be found. But unfortunately, we've gone way the other direction, and it all boils down to the mighty dollar. It's very inexpensive to make, huge. People are always looking, unfortunately, for sort of a quick fix. And so that's why you see it promoted in every type of ointment, shampoo, pill, potion. You rub it, put it on your dog, you name it. It's
Yeah, I've certainly seen a lot of things advertised with that, that this is the latest miracle drug.
right. And nobody has any idea how to dose themselves. Understand? I mean, so, you know, some people might take a little bit and they get some of the marijuana metabolite effect and they think, well, this is a pretty good feeling. I think I'll take even more, not recognizing that they're altering their mental status. Let me tell you something before I forget about it too. What we're seeing more and more, it's being reported. It doesn't get much activity in the lay press, but there is a phenomenon now. If you want to listen, it's called EVALI, EVALI, and that's e-cigarette or vaping use associated lung injury. E-cigarette or vaping use associated lung injury. It's a profound presentation. We're seeing it more in the younger population who's doing so much, vaping, but it's a significant, serious side effect, because most, unfortunately, especially most, and I'm not talking about young people. I've got 10 grandchildren, but vaping, a lot of people vape, but they really don't even know what they're vaping. So they may be thinking they're vaping CBD products, for instance, but there's a lot of other constituents of that, which they're going directly into their lungs. So we're seeing this now more and more showing up in emergency rooms.
It's probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but probably just a good idea overall that if you're inhaling it into your lungs, it's probably a bad idea. If you're going to do this, maybe a gummy is more the speed we should all be going.
Well, it's anything you inhale like that, you're exactly right. The other thing, there's been some in the worldwide literature, uh, actually, there's a lot of studies coming out now showing a significant increase in cardiovascular and cerebrovascular events in younger people who are using marijuana. And of course, the Europeans have known for years that there's a direct association with excess usage of marijuana and significant psychotic events. And there are a lot of European literature studies that, that document that. That hasn't generally sort of filtered over into the United States. Again, a lot of people don't want to know about it, don't want to read about it, and it hasn't received a lot of press. But it's a major issue with people that are using and smoking marijuana excessively.
Okay. Well, Doc, that's all I have. Is there anything else that you want to add on this topic?
No, whatsoever. But again, my final words, what I started out with, I think if I had one message to give to the commercial driving industry would be, do not use any CBD products, because again, unless you have some way to test it yourself, which would be extremely unusual, then you're putting yourself at risk in terms of your career.
Okay. Doc, thank you very much.
Have a good day now.